Kneel before His Majesty, Emperor of Mali.
I bow only to Allah.
Musa's story, in fact, begins with a great mystery. Most emperors kill their father or poison their brother for the throne. But for Musa, it was the exact opposite. He was not planning to take the throne. The year is 1312. Second Abubakar was the ruler of the Mali Empire. Abubakar was interested not in land, but in water. He believed that the endless Atlantic Ocean on the west coast of Africa must have an end. There must be another world beyond this sea, he claimed. This was a full 180 years before Christopher Columbus. Abubakar made a crazy decision. He prepared a fleet of 200 exploration ships and sent them into the ocean. Only one ship returned. The captain said, "The other ships were swept away by a giant current in the middle of the ocean and were lost. I got scared and fled." Abubakar did not give up. This time, he prepared a massive fleet of 2,000 ships. He entrusted the throne to his loyal deputy, Musa, and disappeared beyond the horizon, saying, "Mali is yours until I return." No news was ever received from those ships. Did they sink to the bottom of the ocean, or did they reach the shores of the Americas to start a new life there? This remains one of history's greatest secrets. The only certainty was this: Abubakar was gone, and Musa remained the sole owner of the throne that sat upon the world's largest gold mines. Fate had presented him with the title of emperor on a golden platter. When Musa took the throne, Mali was not just rich. Mali was the engine of the global economy of that era. Why? Because the world desperately needed two things: gold and salt. Gold was the currency and status symbol for kingdoms across Europe and Asia. Salt, on the other hand, meant survival in a world without refrigerators. It was the only way to preserve meat and live. And Mali stood right in the middle of these two resources, like a customs gate. Traders coming from the north brought salt, and those from the south provided gold. Musa collected a tax on every single ounce of this trade. He had established a system so secretive that only the imperial guards knew the location of the mines. If a miner revealed the location of the gold, the penalty was death. This secrecy made Mali's power almost mystical. Musa accumulated this power for years. But he had one problem. The world did not know Mali. For Europeans, Africa was merely an unknown place with lions and monsters. Musa wanted to demolish this perception. He wanted to declare, "I am here." And the most magnificent way to do this was to embark on the Hajj pilgrimage, a requirement of Islam. But he would do it not like an emperor, but like a legend. When the year 1324 arrived, preparations were complete. The huge crowd that set out from Niamey, the capital of Mali, was the kind that would take people's breath away. To call this a caravan would be an insult. This was a walking metropolis. A full 60,000 people. Just think, even today, transporting a group of 60,000 people from point A to point B requires a monumental logistical operation. Moreover, this journey would not be made on asphalt roads, but in the merciless, water-evaporating heat of the Sahara Desert. 500 slaves marched in front of Musa, and each one carried a pure gold staff, weighing about 3 kilograms. These staffs alone were worth millions of dollars in today's currency. Behind them were 80 camels. Each camel carried between 100 to 150 kilograms of gold dust. Soldiers, bureaucrats, the royal family, physicians, cooks. Musa seemed to have dismantled his palace and laid it all out on the road. During the journey, every Friday, he would have a mosque built, even if makeshift, at the place where they stopped. This journey was a logistical miracle, feeding thousands of people for months in a desert environment, finding water, fighting disease. Musa proved not only his wealth, but also his organizational capacity, his military and administrative genius to the world. The deadly silence of the Sahara was broken by the clinking of gold and the footsteps of 60,000 people. When the caravan entered Egyptian territory, legends turned into reality. Cairo was the largest metropolis of the Islamic world at the time. The Mamluk Sultan, Al-Nasir Muhammad, was curious about this mysterious Western king. However, the first encounter was almost going to cause a war. Musa was invited to the palace. Protocol required everyone entering the Sultan's presence to kiss the ground and bow before him. Musa stopped at the palace gate. He was the lord of his own lands. Bow before another mortal? Never. The palace fell silent. Guards drew their swords. Musa fixed his gaze on the Sultan and told the interpreter, "Tell your Sultan, I have come here only to fulfill my Hajj duty and to appear before Allah. I will not bow before men." Then he made a clever maneuver, prostrated himself on the ground, and said, "I bow only to Allah," both making a religious statement and solving the crisis without offending the Sultan's pride. But the real crisis was not going to unfold in the palace, but in the streets. Musa and his entourage stayed in Cairo for 3 months. During these 3 months, Musa literally showered gold. He bought goods from shops, gave handfuls of gold to the poor, and tipped the officials generously. The Egyptians were initially delighted. They said, "Blessings are raining from the sky." But soon after, things changed in the marketplace. Everyone had gold, but bread was limited and cloth was limited. Traders started raising prices. A product worth 1 dinar became 10 dinars. As gold lost its value, inflation exploded. Mansa Musa had printed so much money, metaphorically, that the Egyptian dinar had virtually collapsed. Historians noted, even after Musa left, the Egyptian economy could not recover for 12 years. Imagine a tourist coming to your country, giving out so many tips that your country falls into an economic crisis. This was the greatest financial disaster in history caused by a single person, albeit unintentionally. Musa, having completed his duty in Mecca, was a different man on his return journey. Being only rich was no longer enough for him. He also wanted to leave a lasting legacy. With him, he brought poets, astronomers, whom he had convinced from Al-Andalus, today's Spain, and most importantly, a famous architect named Abu Ishaq al-Sahili. Musa gave this architect 200 kilograms of gold and said, "Build me a city in the middle of the desert that will be the center of Islam and knowledge." This is how Timbuktu was born. Timbuktu, which had been a simple trading post until then, was now equipped with massive mosques and madrasas. Since there was no stone in the region, the architect Sahili turned mud brick architecture into an art form. The iconic Jingareber Mosque, built with egg white, clay, and mud, was an engineering marvel that would stand for centuries. Musa founded the Sankore University. It grew so large that it had around 25,000 students. It housed the largest collection of books Africa had seen since the Library of Alexandria. Just imagine this. While people were burning each other as witches in Europe, Greek philosophical works were being translated, astronomical charts were being drawn, and legal debates were taking place in Timbuktu. Musa invested his gold not in concrete, but in brains. And this investment immortalized Timbuktu. The saying, "Salt comes from the north," Gold comes from the south, but the word of God and the treasures of wisdom are found in Timbuktu began to circulate. However, Musa's show of force had an unexpected consequence. Wealth is power when hidden. It is an invitation when displayed. Stories of Musa reached the ears of Venetian traders. From there, they spread to Spain and Portugal. In 1375, a cartographer named Abraham Cresques drew the famous Catalan Atlas. In the African section of the map, he drew a black king sitting on a throne, holding a massive gold nugget in his hand. He added the note, "This black king is the richest and most noble lord in the world, due to the abundance of gold in his land." This map was like a tempting menu for Europe. Portuguese sailors, Spanish explorers, they all turned their routes toward Africa to find the gold king on that map and claim the treasure. Musa's Hajj journey had introduced Mali to the world, but it had also placed it directly in the crosshairs. The first spark of the age of colonialism, that brutal era of plunder, may have been ignited by that innocent Hajj journey and the distributed gold. When Musa died in 1337, he left behind an empire that had reached its peak. However, his sons could not carry this massive legacy. Internal conflicts, external pressures, and shifting trade routes caused Mali to gradually collapse. The wealth ran out, the gold was plundered, but the books of Timbuktu and Musa's legend remained, even when buried in the sand. As with the Cortez story, we cannot help but ask history's cruel what-if question here. What if Mansa Musa had not been so open about his wealth to the world? If Mali had kept its power secret and continued to grow internally, would the fate of Africa have met colonialism so early? Perhaps Timbuktu would be the global center of finance and science today. Perhaps the African continent would be a governing power, not an exploited one. But history deals not with perhaps, but with lived experiences. Mansa Musa showed us the true nature of money. He used his wealth to bring economies to their knees, build cities, and illuminate a civilization. But at the same time, he proved how uncontrolled power and display awaken future enemies. His story was like a mirage shimmering in the middle of the desert, both fascinating and dangerous. Even today, when the world's richest people are listed, an invisible hand writes his name at the very top. Because he was the only man who proved that wealth is not just the numbers in a bank account, but the power to change the course of history. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the dramatic rise of this legendary figure and the Mali Empire, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and like our video. See you in the next story about another turning point in history. Stay well.